Okay, members, the Assembly is back in session. We are going to start with the Senate third reading file. Senate third reading file. Mr. Calderon has some guests he'd like to recognize before we begin. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, if I could have your attention, generally is a custom of the House to recognize former members who have privileges of the floor based on the fact of their previous public service. We have 4 of them here today, and I would like to introduce each one of them because they have not only some special meaning to me, but I think now they have become at least part of the political folklore of California. So allow me to introduce first former Assemblyman, former Senator, and former Director of Finance, Steve Peace. Also, former Supervisor for for San Bernardino County, former member of the Assembly, Jerry Eves. Also, former member of the Assembly, former member of Congress, Gary Condit. And former member of, I think, was it? You were mayor. You were on the city council of. Never mind. Former member of the Assembly, and my dear friend Rusty Reyes. And ladies and gentlemen, when I get back there, it'll be the first time the Gang of Five has been on the floor since that fateful day that Willie threw us out.
Okay, when we start, the order will be Chesbro, Swanson, Mitchell, Bell, Atkins, Bonilla, Bradford, Lowenthal, Nestande, Pan, Yamada, Gatto. Those are the first ones up. Okay, business on the daily file, second reading. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 9617 with amendments, 922 with amendments, and Senate Bill 870.
Okay, all bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Okay, members, we are going to start at the Senate third reading file. Senate third reading file. File item 80 pass. File item 80 passed temporarily. File item 81 SB 470. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 470 by Senator Evans, an act relating to commercial fishing and making appropriation therefore.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am presenting SB 470, a bill to extend the salmon stamp program, which will expire in January unless we reauthorize the law. The salmon stamp program was initiated by fishermen nearly 30 years ago. They understood that the salmon that they depended on for their livelihood were not returning in the same great numbers of the past. The status quo meant dwindling stocks and a depleted fishery. Commercial fishermen were then and today willing to make an investment in the future of their salmon fishery. So began the salmon stamp program. Since the late 70s, commercial fishermen have purchased salmon stamps. Revenues from the program go into the Fish and Game Preservation Fund and are used for projects to restore and enhance salmon habitat and hatcheries with the intent of increasing salmon landings over time. By helping to increase fish populations, this bill benefits both commercial and sports fishers and ultimately spurs economic growth in local fishing communities and markets and restaurants throughout the state. Funds that go to support fish hatcheries and salmon restoration programs throughout the state also help to retain and grow jobs. Recognizing the state's fiscal crisis, SB 470 ensures that all salmon stamp administrative costs are covered and all expenditures are accounted for. The Department of Fish and Game administration costs can go no higher than 15% of salmon stamp revenues. Commercial fishermen have told me that they want their money wisely spent on projects that benefit salmon and to keep administrative costs down. This bill accomplishes that. The Senate passed SB 470 on a 32-6 bipartisan vote, showing that there's an understanding that this is important to our economy. Our commercial fishermen, as shown by the sponsorship of SB 470 by the West Coast's largest fishing and marketing association, the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations, remain willing to tax themselves. Let's give them that chance to do themselves and everybody else a favor by taxing themselves and using the money directly to benefit the restoration of our salmon fisheries. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Requires 54 votes. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Chesbro moves the call. File item 82 passed temporarily. File items 83 through 87 passed temporarily. File item 88, SB 651. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 651 by Senator Leno and others, an act relating to family law.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. SB 651, Domestic Partnership Equality. SB 651 would eliminate 3 of the legal inequities that still remain between the requirements for entering into a marriage and a domestic partnership. By removing the requirement that both partners share the same residence as a condition to establish a domestic partnership, authorizing a confidential union for domestic partnerships as currently available to married couples, establishing a process for minors to enter into a domestic partnership that mirrors the existing process for minors to enter into a marriage. A common residence requirement does not exist for individuals who wish to be married. Why should one exist for domestic partners? The difference is discriminatory, and there is no reasonable justification for requiring a higher hurdle for domestic partnership than one that currently exists for marriage. Individuals that have entered into a domestic partnership experience the same challenges as those that are affected by married couples. Just like married couples, domestic partners may want to enter into a domestic partnership even though they are in a long-distance relationship or must maintain separate households for any number of reasons, including caring for an elderly parent, pursuing educational goals, or working in a different location. These circumstances would not prevent a union in the case of opposite-sex couples. Why should it prevent same-sex couples from making their relationship official through a domestic partnership? Current state law also fails to provide for a domestic partnership equivalency of confidential marriages. These unions enable a married couple to protect their marriage certificate from public inspection without a court order. This bill simply creates similar provisions for couples that want the confidentiality afforded them as is afforded to married couples. Finally, the bill will permit minors to enter into a domestic partnership in the same manner that heterosexual minors are allowed to marry. This bill simply mirrors the existing statutes provisions that allow a minor to marry if he or she first obtains consent from parents, guardian, or the court. Until marriage is available to all couples in California, we must vigorously identify and eliminate any inequities that exist in the legal right and responsibility between marriage and domestic partnerships. This bill will also help the state comply with Supreme Court rulings of 2008 regarding equal benefits, responsibilities, and rights of domestic partners, and I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And briefly, I rise in opposition to the bill. We've heard this a number of times before. Conceivably, that this bill runs counter to the will of the people of the state of California, as expressed at the ballot box on a number of occasions and affirmed by our California Supreme Court. In addition, the measure carries with it the potentiality of significant state costs, first in implementing the bill and second in the event of dissolution. With respect to the dissolution of domestic partnerships, the law is already somewhat unsettled. There is not uniformity across the across the United States with respect to handling these dissolutions. So we're just adding further uncertainty at a time when the court is considering some of these issues of domestic partnership and marriage, and should give us a resolution relatively soon. In that sense, it is premature. It is also inappropriate in light of our current financial situation to incur these potential additional costs. And finally, the most significant part of this bill, perhaps, is its application to minors. Now, it's one thing when you're dealing with adults, but in this case, we are not. And the opportunity for minors to run to the courts to get around the will or wishes of their parents is a troubling aspect of the bill, especially given that the bill is premature and is expensive. Let's not do it now. Let's revisit this after the courts have clarified California law and decide if this is something then that is really necessary, and decide then if the state of California has the finances to incur this potential additional exposure. So for those reasons, I argue the bill is premature and urge a no vote.
Seeing no, Dr. Halderman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question of the author?
Without objection.
Thank you. My question is the constitutionality of this measure. Currently in the state of California, it is actually illegal to discriminate against those over the age of 40, although we have not defined those under the age of 40 as part of a protected class. So my confusion here is, in the state of California, we currently ban domestic partnerships when both partners are heterosexual and between the ages of 18 and 64. We allow it if one member is above the age of 65, and yet this is specifically saying if you're 16 or 17, you're constitutionally protected in a way that heterosexuals between 18 and 64 are not. I just wondered if the constitutionality of this has been addressed.
Well, what this bill simply tries to do is afford every opportunity that currently exists under current law for those of opposite sex that are getting married to the same sex domestic partnerships. The exact same statutes are being repeated for those individuals, and we think that that's fair.
But we're specifically doing that by banning the benefits of domestic partnerships to heterosexuals when next door in the state of Nevada there is no such ban.
Well, we're just mirroring current law for married couples, for current married couples, for domestic partnerships, and that's in every way, including for minors.
Thank you.
Mr. Damiano.
Yes. Thank you. I stand in strong support of this bill. It makes me a little uneasy to keep parsing this issue. I don't know what is. I respect the opinion, but I really don't understand the architecture of this kind of micro abrasion of issues like this. As far as I know, particularly since I worked on this in San Francisco and other cities, if the issue is, if I'm correct, domestic partnership is not denied heterosexual couples, if that's what the rub seems to be. However, and wherever you rub it needs to be a little more equal in my mind. So I urge a strong I vote for this, and hopefully we can put things like this behind us.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Swanson, you may close.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, this is very simply and very practically an opportunity for loving couples to share their lives together in a way that's not encumbered by the state. That sort of freedom is important, and that sort of respect for the individual's rights to be able to be with who they want and live with who they want and share life with who they want seems fundamental to any right that any of us has, and I ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 22. Measure passes. We're going to go back to file item 84, SB 752. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 752 by Senator Berryhill and others, an act relating to entitlements.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. SB 752 would provide the means for additional sportsmen to be in contact with the nonprofit organization of their choice, bolstering conservation efforts and promoting educational outreach on land management. These nonprofits work closely with the Department of Fish and Game on various habitat enhancement and other conservation projects, but rely heavily on volunteer work to complete these critical efforts. With literally hundreds of thousands of hunting licenses issued each year and just about 1 million fishing licenses issued, this is a great opportunity and time to partner together for some lasting change. This bill has bipartisan support and the broad range of support from California Waterfowl Association, Ducks Unlimited, and the California Council on Land Trust, among many others. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Berryhill.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, members, this does sound more like another Big Brother government bill, but I will say, other than the author, it's a great bill, so urge your support.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 2. Measure passes. File item 89, SB 861. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 861 by Senator Corbin, an act relating to public contracts.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm pleased to present Senate Bill 861, which will prohibit publicly traded companies that fail to comply with federal reporting requirements relative to minerals mined in the Congo from contracting with the state of California. This bill works off the framework of the bipartisan-supported federal Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act signed in July of last year. Under the Act, publicly traded companies must fulfill certain reporting requirements regarding their use of minerals extracted in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Through this legislation, California can greatly influence affairs in that region as we spend $8.92 billion annually in total state contracts. This measure is directed at lowering the demand for these minerals through market and public pressure. Tragically, over 5 million people have died and hundreds of thousands of women have been sexually assaulted by rebel militias largely financed by the sale of these minerals. The issue of violence against women has gained worldwide attention as human rights activists from around the world have rallied to help in this crisis. SB 861 has the support of the Consumer Federation of California, Amnesty International, and 25 investors with over $25 billion worth of assets. This is a clear signal that consumers and investors care about the human cost of these products. Under SB 861, California would be the first state in the nation free of state-purchased conflict minerals. The bill is now unopposed and has enjoyed bipartisan support on the Senate floor and throughout the process. I ask for your consideration.
Mr. Gatto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise in support of this measure, and I want to commend the author as well as the floor manager for bringing this important issue before us. You know, when I was in private practice, I had an opportunity to take a case, an asylum case for a woman who was from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when I had to read about what she went through, 21 members of her family raped, killed, butchered, all because of the trade in these minerals. If we can do anything, and by the way, she was granted asylum in this country, and if we can do anything to stop what's going on over there and have an effect in it by influencing it through our pocketbooks, through our state pocketbooks, we need to do so. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 8. Measure passes. File item 90, SB 43. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 43 by Senator Liu, an act relating to public social services.
Mr. Bell.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, SB 43 makes the state's CalPresh employment and training program more effective and equitable. Recent amendment made technical changes requested by our administration, and it passed out to Senate Floor 39-0. I ask for your aye vote on this measure.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote.
12:15.
Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 13. Measure passes. Okay, members, we're going to recess the regular session for the purpose of convening the first extraordinary session. Without objection, we will substitute the prayer pledge, other opening procedures in the regular session for those items in the first extraordinary session. Motions and resolutions. Mr. Calderon.
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow authors to take up the following second reading items without reference to file as amended in mock-up form for purposes of third reading today. File item 3, file item 4, and file item 5.
Without objection?
Also,
Oh, Mr. Hagman?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do object to take these up and ask for a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Hagman objects to suspending the rule to allow these items to be heard without reference to file as amended in mock-up form for the purpose of third reading today. Clerk will open the roll. Mr. Calderon asks for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman asks for a no vote.
They are ready to take up.
Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 47, noes 23. Motion carries. Mr. Calderon.
Also, Madam Speaker, request that AB 625 by C. Calderon, that it be removed from engrossing and enrolling, to rescind the floor vote of September 2nd, and to return the bill to the Senate.
Is that a test? That's regular session.
Well, I wish you'd make up your mind.
Okay, second reading under the extraordinary session. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 456, 813, and Senate Bill 18.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Mr. Jeffries, for what purpose do you rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise to request unanimous consent to refer AB 45X to the floor for consideration. Hasn't been referred to committee. The bill has not been referred to committee. It's the bill to repeal the SRA fire tax.
Mr. Calderon?
Yes, Madam Speaker. This motion was made in Budget Committee and was tabled. And so I'm going to ask for a no vote to suspend the rules for this purpose. It's non-debatable.
Mr. Jeffries, your point of order?
Point of order is that statement is incorrect. This bill was not considered in committee.
Mr. Calderon?
Madam Speaker, I stand corrected. I thought that this was a measure that was in committee, in Budget Committee, and was tabled. But it was not a bill. It was an amendment. This was offered. The substance of the bill requesting to be referred to committee was an amendment to another bill which was tabled by the committee. So the bill, AB 45, which is in question, is now at the desk, and there's unanimous consent for unanimous consent to refer that bill to committee, and I oppose that motion.
Okay, so we're asking for a roll call.
Okay, let's clarify.
Okay, so we're going to try to clarify the motion. Mr. Jeffries is moving to refer AB 45 to the floor.
Oh, well then, wait a minute. Clarifies.
Okay, so your motion is a different motion then.
My motion is what I stated at the very beginning, which was to have unanimous consent to refer AB 45 to the floor. That's exactly what I said.
The bill is already on the floor, pending referral. So you can move to take it up without reference to file.
That's correct. That's my second statement, is to move to take it up without reference to file.
Okay.
I have to get from one step to the other.
Right. You can't withdraw a bill that's already on the floor. So the bill is on the floor. You would like to hear it without reference to file?
So moved.
Mr. Jeffries is moving to suspend the rules to hear AB 45 on the floor. Mr. Calderon asked for a no vote. Mr. Hagman asked for an aye vote. Oh, who's seconding your motion, Mr. Jeffries? Mr. Donnelly. Takes 41 votes. Not debatable. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Hagman asks for an aye vote. Mr. Calderon asks for a no vote. Takes 41 votes. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 24, noes 42. Motion fails. Okay, we're going to recess the first extraordinary session upon call of the Speaker. We are back in regular session. We're going to continue with the Senate third reading file. Where we left off, file item 91, SB 416. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 416 by Senator Kehoe, an act relating to health.
Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. SB 416 would require the Department of Public Health and the Department of Healthcare Services to collaborate with the University of California to include voluntary self-identification information on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression into the questions already asked by the California Health Interview Survey by January 1st, 2015. It would also require both departments to collaborate with the California State Coordinator for the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System to include similar questions by that same date. There is an increasing concern from researchers and others about the lack of information about the LGBT community. A recently released groundbreaking report from the Institutes of Medicine concluded that LGBT individuals have unique health experiences and needs, but as a nation we do not know exactly what these experiences and needs are. Building a more solid evidence base for LGBT health concerns will not only benefit LGBT individuals, but also add to the repository of health information we have that pertains to all people. SB 416 represents a positive step in that direction. I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 22. Measure passes. File item 92, SB 429. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 429 by Senator DeSonia and others, an act relating to before and after school programs.
Ms. Bonilla.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Unequal summer learning opportunities during elementary school years are responsible for about 2/3 of the 9th grade achievement gap between lower and higher income youth. SB 429 does 3 different things. It allows after-school programs to operate for an extended 6 hours per day, which is critical to provide support for students' learning and for working families' schedules. Secondly, it allows students from the entire district to enroll in summer programs to accommodate students at low-income schools that may not have funds to run those summer programs. And then it clarifies that programs may operate off-site. Amendments were taken in Assembly Appropriations Committee to clarify that there are no costs imposed by SB 429. These supplemental grants have already been allocated to these programs through federal funding and Proposition 49. Under this bill, the state and federal allocations will not change. SB 429 will simply maximize summer learning opportunities without increasing the grant size or creating any additional expenditures. It makes the funding stream more effective by giving local communities flexibility to design summer learning programs to meet the specific needs of their young people. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 20. The measure passes. File item 93, SB 454. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 454 by Senator Pavley, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 454 is a common sense measure to ensure that consumers are getting a fair deal from companies selling energy efficiency products and services, and to help the state meet its energy efficiency goals. This bill gives the California Energy Commission the ability to enforce energy efficiency code violations for appliances and requires the proper permits before energy efficiency rebates can be dispersed by investor-owned utilities. This bill is supported by a broad-based coalition of labor, business, and environmental organizations. Additionally, recent amendments have removed opposition by the Consumer Electronics Association and Sony, as well as other industry trade associations. I respectfully ask for an aye vote and request immediate transmittal to the Senate.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 20. The measure passes. And immediate transmittal is denied. File item 94, SB 468. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 468 by Senator Kehoe, an act relating to transportation.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. SB 468 is specific to the proposed 27-mile, 40-year widening of Interstate 5 through unique areas of the coastal zone in San Diego County between La Jolla and Oceanside. This bill represents a partnership between Caltrans, the San Diego Association of Governments, and the Coastal Commission to ensure that the improvements protect the unique qualities of the coastal zone, assure multimodal transportation options to the public, contribute to cleaner air, water quality, and congestion relief, and stay as much as possible within the existing Caltrans right-of-way so that the state doesn't end up having to condemn all or part of over 400 homes. SB 468 will lead to a reduction in traffic congestion along this corridor and ensure additional public transportation options are created. This bill is supported by SANDAG, Coastal Commission, California Council of Laborers, Associated General Contractors, the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, and the Planning and Conservation League. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. It arguably started off on a very rocky process that had a lot of opponents, a lot of opposition from many interest groups. The author worked through the process, worked with a lot of the opponents, and I believe that most, if not all, of the original opponents have been removed, have taken their opposition off. The project is now going to be allowed to move forward with additional expansion within the existing right-of-way, as was pointed out by the floor jockey. We now have a good bill for all parties, and I encourage an aye vote.
Mr. Wessow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As a former Coastal Commissioner and also a board member with SANDAG, San Diego Association of Governments, I can tell you that a lot of effort, a lot of time went into putting this bill together. This is going to save taxpayers' dollars. It's going to also be respectful of the environment. It's going to get all the agencies working together to ensure that we can reduce traffic congestion in San Diego. This is a great bill, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to save taxpayers in the millions and millions of dollars. So I respectfully request an aye vote for this important bill.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 47, noes 10. The measure passes. File item 95, SB 705. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 705 by Senator Leno, an act relating to public utilities.
Mr. Nasandi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On September 9th last year, a gas pipeline ruptured and exploded in San Bruno, resulting in the loss of 8 lives and destruction of 38 homes. This bill grows out of what we have learned from the aftermath of that disaster: the importance of making safety an explicit state priority, the necessity for implementing the safety policy at both the utility level and the CPUC level, and the importance of assuring ratepayers and the public that rate revenues authorized to support safety and the safety programs are just and reasonable and are spent for that purpose. This bill provides the necessary policy framework for the CPUC as it proceeds with the gas safety rulemaking proceeding and reflects the legislature's permanent commitment to safety as a priority in the industry. SB 705 has received bipartisan support and has no registered opposition. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 57, noes 10. Measure passes. File item 96, SB 706. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 706 by Senator Price, an act relating to business and professions.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Senate Bill 706 by Senator Price is the outgrowth of oversight hearings conducted by the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee earlier this year. The hearings demonstrated a need for revising and enhancing the enforcement mechanisms for the Department of Real Estate and the Office of Real Estate Appraisers following the crisis in the real estate market. SB 706 enacts numerous changes and provides for increased transparency and discipline of licensees who have committed violations. There is no opposition to the bill by the regulated community or anyone else, and the most recent sets of amendments addressed any outstanding concerns. I would ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 44, noes 19. The measure passes. File item 97, SB 866. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 866 by Senator Hernandez, an act relating to health care coverage.
Mr. Pan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I'm pleased to present SB 866, which is a bill that would create standard prior authorization forms for prescription drugs. This bill will require that all health plans insurers use the standardized form and respond to requests made to the standardized form within 2 business days. It also directs the Department of Managed Health Care and Department of Insurance to jointly develop a form with stakeholder input that is no longer 2 pages, taking account of national standards and existing standardized forms used currently by Medicare and Medi-Cal. As a physician, I know how burdensome it is to try to file these various authorization forms. This is something that will help release health professionals so they can spend more time with their patients and less time filling out paperwork. So I urge you to support and urge aye vote on this very important bill. Thank you.
54 vote. Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 16. The measure passes. File item 98, pass and retain. File item 99, pass temporarily. File item 100, pass temporarily. File item 101, SB 790. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 790 by Senator Leno, an act relating to electricity.
Mr. Nastandi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 790 updates the state's nearly decade-old community choice aggregation law. It removes unnecessary barriers, sets up a code of conduct for electrical corporations, provides for fair treatment of CCA customers, encourages local control and customer choice, and provides healthy competition in the electricity procurement that will benefit all customers, including bundled service customers. This bill, members, is a kind of an outgrowth of, remember, the electricity deregulation. After that, we had a bill to say let's allow communities to start aggregating together, buying electricity directly from providers, called direct access. Direct access has mainly been used in the commercial, with commercial entities, not residential. So what community choice aggregation attempts to do is allow consumers or residents to bundle together in a JPA city or county format and buy electricity directly from providers. This brings competition to the electricity market, which I believe drives down prices, allows for consumer choice, and makes it a better marketplace. I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of SB 790. Community choice aggregation was a preferred option in my portion of the San Joaquin Valley, but it became a cumbersome process through a JPA problem. I mean, I worked on this in probably 7 or 8 years ago when I served on the Board of Supervisors. The opponents were able to pick apart the JPA, and as a result, CCA was never able to get off the ground. SB 790 would empower an entity in my part of the valley, the Kings River Conservation District, to serve as a CCA. Anyone who supports competition with reasonable rules of the road for all load-serving entities, I would encourage you to support this bill and vote aye. Thank you.
Mr. Garrick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question of the floor jockey or the author?
Without objection, the floor manager will answer.
Yes.
In our analysis, I have a concern here that this actually requires the investor-owned utilities to release customer data usage to this new entity, the community choice aggregators. Is this true?
Well, the bill's been, that issue's been brought up. They had changed the bill early on to protect consumer information, but one of the points is, if you're going to aggregate as a community the electricity, you need to know the load and what exactly is it that you're going to aggregate, how much power to procure then. But there's been safety provisions worked into the bill to where consumer data will be protected.
On my own time, Mr. Speaker?
Sure.
Thank you. I guess this is a concern, having myself started an aggregation business instead of for electricity. It was actually for OnePlus service or telecommunication service, and ended up with over 2,500 customers. But I had to go to each of the customers and ask for their private usage information, and not having the government's heavy hand reach in and mandate that individual customer's usage information would be delivered to a community choice aggregator through this law. So at this point, I have a few concerns that I believe are still outstanding, and I am going to remain off this bill.
Ms. Grove.
Yeah, question of the author.
Without objection.
There is a section in this bill that's the last previous section that we've discussed, 511 or 11.5, and it deals with Management Corporation Trust. Can you tell me where the money comes from to fund that Management Corporation Trust under this provision?
This provision does not affect that issue. This provision simply states that nothing can change what is federal law. So nothing will be done differently here than is previously done or is now being done.
Again,
according to law.
The author, the same question. The question wasn't answered. Can you tell me where the money...
Mr. Nastandi, you may answer if you wish.
You know, I don't think that's in the bill, so I don't think that's something I can't answer that's not in the bill.
On my own time? Yes. Okay, there's a provision in this bill that is completely unrelated to this bill. And this provision basically protects labor unions' slush funds. Permission to show a prop.
Permission is denied.
Denied. Permission of freedom of speech.
Ms. Grove, you will follow the rules of this House. There is no organized speech without rules.
What I'm saying is related to the bill.
You may speak to the merits of the bill.
Okay, permission to show a prop relating to the language in this bill.
Permission is denied.
Pardon me? Okay, so without the prop, there is a slush fund established by the unions to extort money from ratepayers.
Ms. Grove, you are out of order. You are out of order, and pursuant to Rule 108.1 of this House, you will observe the decorum of this House. You cannot raise a point of order unless you are addressed, Ms. Halderman. Oh, I'm sorry. You may raise a point of order. I thought you were raising a point of personal privilege. Please state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appeal the decision of the chair.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. What is your point of order?
Repeal the decision of the chair regarding the use of a prop related to the bill.
Okay. I'm sorry. The decision to use a prop is granted at unanimous consent. I did not grant unanimous consent. That is not appealable.
I don't believe that's the rules of the House, that it's not appealable.
That is the rules of the House. You may appeal. If you really want to make this House go through a vote on the use of a prop, you may make a motion. But pursuant
so moved.
Pursuant to Rule 94, I'm going to request that motion in writing.
Sounds good.
Mr. Nastandi, in the meantime, you may close.
Okay, yeah, and prop or no prop, it doesn't matter to me. I know the point Ms. Grove has made. We've had many discussions, and I simply don't believe the point she's attempting to make is relevant to the bill. It is a theory that I think is a theory, but to the point of the bill, this is about community choice aggregation, which is allowing competition within an area that would like to do that, to have a choice as to whom provides electricity for that area. That is a healthy thing. That is a good thing. That is a democratic issue. It's a Republican issue. It's a Democratic issue. It's a good thing to provide competition within any industry. And what the CCAs do is attempt to, have a choice in who provides electricity to the community. I think it's a good bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 46, noes 7. The measure passes. Mr. Hagman, for what purpose do you rise?
Just a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State your point.
Okay, first of all, I believe the previous speaker, even though the use of prop was denied by the chair, still had the right to finish her argument. Second of all, we do have rules of the House of reading and using props that would like to see applied equally to both sides of the House. If you're going to start calling the technical rules on our members, we'd like to see those technical rules applied to both sides of the House as far as use of reading materials, the use of props, those type of things, and we would ask that be handed out equally.
Okay, Mr. Hagman has raised 2 points. On the first point of order, Mr. Hagman is incorrect. The speaker was out of order, and I ruled her out of order. On the second point, Mr. Hagman is correct, and we will apply the rules equally. Thank you. File item 102, pass and retain. File item 103, SB 576. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 576 by Senator Calderon, an act relating to sentencing.
Mr. Cedillo.
Yes, in the interest of unity, and I'm going to put this pen in my pocket so it's not considered a prop. let me ask all of us to join in ensuring that we have a sentencing law or a group of sentencing laws here in California that will continue until the year 2014, lest we let everyone go free who's duty-bound to spend time in jail. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Cedar, I'm told that amendments are at the desk. Do you wish to hold this over until those amendments can be considered, or please state your preference?
My preference is to work with the House and move this bill in the most expeditious manner. If that is to work with you on the amendments, I'm happy to do so. Yes.
Okay, we're gonna pass temporarily on this item because we just received the amendments.
They are chaptering amendments. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
The amendments are chaptering amendments. Do you need me to move those? I'm happy to do so.
Okay, yeah, we're going to pass temporarily on this item just because neither side
I'm
has
happy
had
to cooperate with you in any manner I can.
Thank you very much. Neither side has had a chance to look at the amendments, so we're going to let those go out for analysis. File item 104, SB 310. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 310 by Senator Hancock, and act relating to local development.
Mr. Williams.
I rise to present another less threatening bill here for the moment. Senate Bill 310, the Voluntary Transit Priority Project Program, which builds on the Infrastructure Financing District law that allows local municipalities to fund economic development through tax increment financing and to facilitate the development of transit priority projects. Assembly floor amendments that you all voted for removed opposition from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the California Association of Realtors, CBIA, Business Properties Association, and the California Taxpayers Association. So now that that opposition is dropped, I hope you all can join me in supporting it.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 18. The measure passes. File item 105 passed temporarily. File item 106, SB 244. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 244 by Senator Wolk and others, and act relating to local government.
Mr. Perea.
Mr. Speaker and members, approximately 1 million people live in disadvantaged, unincorporated communities that lack basic necessities such as clean drinking water, adequate sewage disposal, and other critical infrastructure. SB 244 makes certain that cities and counties begin planning for these disadvantaged and poorest communities in their next general plan update. This bill also requires LAFCOs at the next revision of their 5-year municipal service reviews to identify disadvantaged communities and examine the water, sewer, and fire protection deficiencies within these communities. Additionally, SB 244 provides authority for local governments to access the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan program for planning costs to implement infrastructure projects. This bill has received bipartisan support, and I ask for your aye vote and immediate transmittal to the Senate.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We did hear this in committee. The author has taken amendments. However, I must rise in opposition, not because the intent is bad here and the goal that the author has. The problem that has happened, of course, is the shift that occurred with the property tax revenues and the RDA funds, specifically the RDA funds. These communities, these cities no longer have the revenues to comply with what this bill intends to achieve. When you're being pushed to annex these unincorporated communities that have infrastructure challenges, you need the revenues in order to make those improvements. We unfortunately have done some financial harm to the cities by way of taking their RDA funds and making it more difficult for them to fund these projects. And so with that, we have no choice. We're either going to tell the cities they must proceed, and we're not going to let you have the revenues, or we have to back off of this bill and say it needs to wait until we fix the future of the RDAs and the funding, and therefore I must encourage a no vote at this time.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I heard this bill in committee, and one of the points, the cities were here, many of your cities appeared to protest this bill, not because they don't want to accept the unincorporated areas. Many cities do, but there is a process for that. It's called Local Area Formation Committee. It's LAFCO, and those of you from local government know that this exists. And the way that they determine how to incorporate or not to incorporate it is not, it's not by trying to discriminate against the area. It's what level of service can be afforded or supported. When we were incorporating in the city of Dana Point in 1980s, we went through a LAFCO hearing, many hearings, and they put together our city so that we would be economically sustainable. They didn't allow us to just incorporate anywhere we wanted. And because there are costs to some areas that cities probably right now cannot afford, neither can counties. And so while I understand that this might be a desirable goal, I too agree that perhaps we might want to just wait right now for the sake of our cities and our counties and allow this to maybe proceed next year when things settle out. It is desirable to try to incorporate some of these areas, but what's happening at the local level, which you all know, all your cities got hit with VLF and other things. And as well as the redevelopment monies. I think it's really, really important that we work with them before we mandate future action in acquisitions and expense. Thank you.
Mr. Prea, you may close.
I would just respectfully ask for your aye vote, and colleagues just say that while I appreciate the concern of some, I don't believe that we should wait. As a co-author of this bill and as someone who represents many of the rural communities that are affected by this, these people should not have to wait for another day for clean drinking water, and I urge an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Prea moves the call. Okay, colleagues, we're going to go back to the concurrence file, but before that, we're going to quickly lift a call. The call that we are lifting is going to be we're going to lift the call for file item 81, which is SB 470. Clerk will post. Mr. Chesbro moves the call. Okay, colleagues, I spoke too soon. We're going to return to Senate bills for one that I passed temporarily on. Then we're going to move to the concurrence file. So this is file item 99. File item 99, SB 931. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 931 by Senator Evans and others, an act relating to employment.
Ms. Yamada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise as a proud principal co-author, along with my colleague, Assemblywoman Wilmer Amina Carter, to present SB 931, which will establish the authority to use payroll cards as a method of delivering wages in California. We'll also establish a reasonable state standard for the use of payroll cards in California. They are an increasingly popular form of wage payment. I think we know that they are very safe, efficient, and provide security for both employers and employees. This bill is a result of a lot of conversations and discussions amongst all of the stakeholders. We believe that the agreements that have been made and embodied in this legislation will provide certainty to both employers and employees. I respectfully ask for your aye vote in establishing common sense rules for the use of payroll cards in California. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Carter.
Mr. Speaker and members, I join Assemblymember Yamada in asking you to support SB 931. This bill creates the protections our workers need so businesses can streamline their fiscal responsibilities while still maintaining their obligation to fully pay their workers, and I'm a proud co-sponsor, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Yamada moves a call. So members, we're going to go back to the concurrence file. First one up is file number 10. File number 10, this is AB 1088. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1088 by Assemblymember Ng and others, an act relating to state agencies.
Mr. Ang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill is back on concurrence, and I'm proud to bring it forward today. If you were to go to any of the state agencies and collect data on any of the individuals in the Asian American, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities, you will probably find that data missing. Without that data, it's important to have, because we don't know who we serve. It's difficult to know how we serve. The Senate amendments narrowly crafted the bill to make it have less costs. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
I rise in opposition to the bill like I did the last time it came before us. My understanding is the purpose of the bill is to identify certain underrepresented refugee groups, specifically the Hmong, who were displaced by the Vietnam War and have ongoing social needs. And if that's the case, then I think the bill should be more narrowly tailored to those groups that it's being focused on, rather than to try to categorize every subgroup of Asian American, including Sri Lankan, Taiwanese, Pakistani, Malaysian. There are groups in here that don't even exist in their own countries. I pointed out last time that Malaysian is not an ethnicity. Even in Malaysia, everyone's categorized based on Indian, Malay, or Chinese. Fijian, in Fiji Island, half of them are native Fijians, half of them are relatives of Indian immigrants. So these are things that really have no value, and they're further confusing. Plus, there's confusion as to what should be part of the Asian American subcategory and what isn't. Turkish Americans, Iranian Americans, Uzbeki Americans, Afghan Americans, none of them are here, though they came originally from the Asian continent. There are also, under the huge umbrella of white/Caucasian Americans, many subgroups, refugee groups, We have a significant number of Russian Americans in the Sacramento area. My district has high concentrations of Romanian Americans and Arab Americans that are under this white or Caucasian umbrella. And maybe we should pull them out as well and look at their needs. But to do that, we don't need to categorize everybody as Irish or German or Norwegian or Danish or Greek or Swiss to do that. So if we're looking at specific groups with specific needs, let's target them, not have a scattershot approach, which will lead to needless racial categorization, which doesn't really address what the bill is aimed at in the first place.
Mr. Eng, you may close.
I wish to thank my colleague for his comments, and I respectfully wish to differ. If first of all, point number one, members, if what my colleague was saying was true, we would not have over 100 different Pacific Islander groups that are supportive of the bill. Let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is right now that when we try to do studies on health care, for example, when we know that there are specific disparities for different ethnic groups. As an example, African Americans have a disparity for sickle cell anemia. Latinos have disparities for such issues such as obesity. We know that the Jewish community has certain health indicators, and that's true of these different ethnic groups. My sister, who passed away recently, was at risk for an issue called hepatitis and liver disease, which affects about 40% of that particular ethnic group. And without knowing who these groups are, it's difficult to address our services toward them. Let me close by giving you an example. Right now, if you were to aggregate the data on breast cancer for men and women throughout California or the United States of America, you would conclude there's no problem with breast cancer, that we Americans and we Californians don't have a problem. It's only when you disaggregate the data between male and female breast cancer rates do you realize that women have disparities for certain diseases. And that's true of the Asian Pacific Islander community, my community, that for many, many years has suffered because of the lack of data. My community has alarming rates of disproportionate probation violations. They rank among the highest. But if you go to anybody and ask them, are Asian Americans in jail, they'll say no, they're the model minority. And as a result of that, you won't see very many programs aimed at reducing recidivism in my community, because the data is not there, and if the data is not there, these people don't count, and if these people don't count, there are no resources. So, members, this bill really makes good sense as a matter of public policy. It will help each of you understand the disparities that exist in your communities. And these communities may not exist overseas, but they sure exist here in the United States of America and in California as well. This bill is a matter of life and death. This bill is a matter of improving the quality of life for individuals that have long never counted in our society and in California. It's a good bill. It makes sense. It's a very, very high priority, the highest priority that I can think of in the Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native American communities, and I respectfully and humbly request an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 50, noes 14. The measure passes. Or Senate amendments are concurred in. Colleagues, we're going to go back to file item 8. This is file item 8. AB 767. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 767 by Assemblymember John A. Perez and others, and act relating to the State Capital Sustainability Task Force.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 767 is returned for concurrence. 767, as you'll remember, establishes the State Capital Sustainability Task Force to further advance our environmentally friendly practices here at the State Capitol. It'll consist of a representative from the official tenants of the Capitol, the Senate, the Assembly, the Governor's Office, and the Lieutenant Governor's Office. The Senate amendments expand the types of green building ratings that the task force can consider, directs the Department of General Services to seek grants and other funding opportunities, and sunsets the task force on January 1st, 2014. AB 767 previously passed the Assembly with bipartisan support, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 13. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 11 passed temporarily. File item 12, AB 1136. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1136 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act relating to employment safety.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1136 is designed to help ease the strain of patients lifting while preserving the quality of care for patients by requiring hospitals to implement a safe patient handling policy. This matter took amendments in the Senate in response to some opposition, specifying that hospitals are not required to hire new staff to comprise lift teams as long as patient care assignments are not compromised, defines healthcare workers as lift team members or other staff who is specifically trained to handle patient lifts, repositioning and transferring, using patients' transfer, repositioning, and lifting devices as appropriate for safe patient handling, exempts general acute care hospitals within the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and the State Department of Development Services. AB 1136 will help improve patient safety and limit workplace injuries by requiring the use of lift teams and safe patient handling and giving hospitals the flexibility to train existing staff in safe patient handling techniques. And I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 22. Members, just a reminder that Assembly Rule 112 requires you to seek permission before you read. Please keep that in mind. Please keep reading to a minimum. Thank you. File items 13 through 16, pass and retain. File item 17, AB 54. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 54 by Assemblymember Solorio, an act relating to drinking water.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill expedites the funding of projects to improve drinking water quality and levels the playing field between public water agencies and private mutual water companies. The amendments in the Senate were to address some concerns by the Department of Public Health. This bill has broad bipartisan support, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 2. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 65 has been referred to committee. I'm sorry, file item 18, AB 65 has been referred to committee. File item 19, AB. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Did we forget file item 15, Mr. Speaker?
I do not show that as on our list today, but we can take it up. Nope. File item 15, AB 29. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 29 by Assemblymember John A. Perez and others, an act relating to economic development.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Jeffrey's staff has the support on it. I ask for concurrence.
Well, seeing no questions or debate, then clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 58, noes 4. Senate amendments are concurred in. File item 19, AB 86. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 86 by Assemblymember Mendoza, an act relating to charter schools.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm here to present AB 86. AB 86 accepts Senate amendments, a bill that will give classified employees the opportunity to participate in the petitioning process when establishing a new charter school or when an existing school is seeking to be converted. Senate amendments specify that the signature requirement to be at least 50% of the combined total of both non-supervisorial certificated staff and the classified staff. The amendments also add double joining language to avoid chaptering out issues. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this measure because it would stifle innovation in California charter schools. The bill makes it more difficult to start or create a charter school. As a mom, I've used charter schools, and I'm pro-charter schools. This bill requires signatures from employees that are not necessarily going to be employed by conversion charter schools. The practical effect is that we will see our charter school growth stopped in its tracks. Charters are already subjected to the toughest accountability that can exist, and that is the right of exit. So parents that can take their child out of a charter school if they're not satisfied with how their child is doing. If the charter school is not doing its job, it loses its membership. The same cannot be said about traditional public schools. I ask for your no vote.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Let me just echo the fine comments of my colleague. This bill is unnecessary because, while charters exist to provide some competition to the private schools, the parents are allowed to put their kids in there or not as the parents see fit. The question of whether the schools are performing is the question that gets answered in the most direct and visceral way possible by the parents saying, yes, I like what is being done here, I think this school is serving my child, or saying, no, it's not. And pulling the kid, and with the kid, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with the kid pulling the money out of the charter school. That's the accountability that in the real world actually matters. That's the accountability that this bill, in many ways, thwarts. We go the wrong direction. If we like charter schools, if we think they provide a reasonable alternative to the public schools and a valuable alternative, we should be empowering them. If we want to kill them, which is what a lot of bills on this floor have done this year, then let's just say that and end the charter school experiment. But I don't think we're there yet. The parents can tell us whether the schools are working. The parents can tell us through the right of exit whether remedial action needs to be taken at a school. The legislature can't make that decision. For that reason, I oppose this unnecessary bill.
Mr. Mendoza, you may close.
Members, this bill is very necessary. It has nothing to do with stopping the conversion of schools to charter schools. All it does, it gives an opportunity for classified employees to have a voice in the process, a seat at the table, and be counted just like the rest of the employees of that school or future employees of that school. The charters can still move forward, however they proceed, but we just want to give them the opportunity to have a vote. And with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Mendoza, state your pleasure. Mr. Mendoza moves the call. File item 20, AB 89. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 89 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to county employees' retirement and declaring an urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a district bill. Assembly Bill 89 provides that San Mateo County with the statutory authority to implement a memorandum of understanding, and it will save the county approximately $10 million across 6 years. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 63, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. I'm sorry. Ayes 63, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 63, no 0 on the measure. Senate amendments are concurred in. So, colleagues, just a reminder, we're going to take a lunch break at 1 o'clock. Just for those watching outside, for those watching inside, lunch break at 1 o'clock. Before we break for lunch, we are going to lift the call on file number 81. This is file number 81, colleagues. We're going to lift the call on SB 470. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 56, noes 15. Senate amendments, or no, the measure passes. We're going to lift the call on file item 106. This is file item 106, SB 244. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 23. The measure passes. We're going to lift the call on file item 99. Lift the call on 99, SB 931. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 24. The measure passes. So, colleagues, just a reminder, we're going to take a lunch break at 1 o'clock. We're going to return at 2:15. That's 2:15. Lunch break from 1 to 2:15, respective caucuses. We're going to do one more bill before lunch. This is file item 21, AB 180. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 180 by Assemblymember Carter and others, and act relating to academic performance.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. AB 180 allows specified dropout recovery schools in partnership with job training programs to utilize an individual growth model to demonstrate success and accountability. The Senate amendment ensures that the model is consistent with future changes to the state's accountability system. AB 180 has bipartisan support and has received no votes. I respectfully ask for your concurrence in the Senate amendments.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 74, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to recall AB 621 from engrossing and enrolling, to rescind the floor vote on September 2nd and return the bill to the Senate.
Without objection, clerk will note.
Also, at the request of the author, please move file item 16, AB 41 by Mr. Hill, to the inactive file.
Without objection.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, during the lunch break, appropriations will be meeting in room 4202 to hear SB 226 and SB 946. Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials will be meeting in the Rules Committee to hear AB 681. Health will be meeting in room 437 to hear AB 641. PERS will be meeting in room 127 to hear SB 827. Public Safety will be meeting in room 126 to hear AB 520. And Transportation, upon the adjournment appropriations, will meet in room 4202 to hear AB 1164.
Okay, colleagues, just please pay attention. Just to repeat, appropriations meeting in 4202 during the lunch break. Environmental Safety will be meeting in the Rules Room. Health will be meeting in room 437. PERS in room 127. Public Safety in 126. Transportation in 4202 after appropriations is done.
Yes, and finally, Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A to allow the following committees to meet today upon the call of the chair in a room to be announced: Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials, Governmental Organizations, Health, Labor, Public Safety, Revenue and Taxation, and Transportation. They will be hearing retrospectively. Environmental Committee be hearing AB 681, Government Org be hearing AB 1417, Health will be hearing AB 641, Labor Committee meet and hear AB 436, Public Safety Committee will meet to hear AB 520, Rev and Tax will meet to hear AB 1424 and ABX1, and Transportation will meet to hear AB 1164.
Without objection, unanimous consent is granted. Mr. Swanson, for what purpose do you rise?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the labor. Did he give a time for labor?
Mr. Calderon, please repeat the Labor Committee. Okay, I believe it's upon adjournment. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Right. There's not a time for these hearings, although some of these committees will be meeting today. For instance, Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials will be meeting in the Rules Committee room, and they're going to hear AB 681.
Okay, we will make the announcement.
Or governmental organization. Labor is going to meet in to hear AB 436, but we don't have a room yet.
Okay, colleagues, we'll make these announcements again as the day proceeds. This concludes our business for now. We're going to break for caucuses, for lunch, and also for committee meetings. We will stand in recess until 2:15 p.m. Colleagues, that's 2:15 p.m. Thank you.